Your brand guide says one thing, but your output says something completely different. In this video, we're going to look at AI output that is generated from no brand guidance whatsoever, brand guidance that comes from traditional brand guidelines, and AI output that comes from AI ready brand guidelines, because there is a difference. And every day that your well meaning colleagues use ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude to create content that represents your brand and they do it without, every day, your brand loses a little of its value, your competitive differentiation decreases, and your clients and prospects become more and more confused. Brand guidelines were written for humans, humans with intuition, humans with specific skill sets, humans with continuity with your brand. And AI doesn't have that. AI pulls from sources all around the world to create something new, but it's based on everyone. So it's not really different. In order to maintain your differentiation, you have to use AI the right way. To prove that, we are going to create content using the brand guidelines that we created for one of our favorite clients, the Massachusetts Children's Alliance. The Massachusetts Children's Alliance, despite the name, is a national leader in finding the most pioneering, cutting edge ways that we can support children who have become victims of abuse. I'll put a link to their URL and more information about them in the description so you can learn more and ideally support their work. One of the reasons they're a national leader is because they take their brand very seriously. They understand the connection that a strong brand has with connecting to the people who are most important to their success, whether those are donors, whether those are member children's advocacy centers. They are very cognizant of who they are and how they come to life. So we're going to use their brand guidelines and create some content that they would never create because, as I said, they are on point when it comes to their brand. All right, well, let's get started with a prompt that has no reference to brand. This is something that happens because not everybody thinks a brand, believe it or not. So let's just start with a generic one, something like I work for Massachusetts Children's Alliance, write a letter to the editor for a Massachusetts newspaper about Child Abuse Awareness Month. I added the previous disclaimer, discard any previous shared information, just so ChatGPT starts from scratch for the purpose of this exercise. So let's see what we get. Okay. April's Child Abuse Awareness Month, a time to recognize an uncomfortable truth. When a child discloses abuse, the response they receive can shape their healing for years to come. Okay. Massachusetts Children's Alliance supports a statewide network of advocacy centers. Okay. Protecting the children is not solely the responsibility of professionals. Okay. This Child Abuse Awareness Month, we encourage everyone. All right, great. All right, so there's nothing wrong with that per se, but it sounds like any type of organization that deals with child abuse. So let's do another one. This one we're going to paste in the verbal identity guidelines from the brand overall brand guidelines. Again, we're going to disregard shared information or previously shared information. And here we go, the way it comes to life. Talk about the personality attributes, on brand principles, right this way instead of that way. So, a bunch of, there's a fair amount of content here. And this is pulled right from the brand guidelines. Let's see what we get. Okay, every child deserves to grow up safe. All right, that's a bit more impactful. Every year in Massachusetts. Cannot meet today's challenges with yesterday's system. That is new and relevant to MACA. Exists to strengthen this work by supporting centers. Okay. Professionals cannot do this work alone. Great. Child abuse is not inevitable. Our response continues to evolve. Okay. All right. All right, now let's do one with guidelines that were drafted specifically for AI. All right, here are our full guidelines. So this includes everything. including emotional objective, audiences, its colors, although that would not be relevant here. But let's see what we get. Okay, best possible care. Expectation should never stand still. All right, that's new. Understanding of trauma evolves, so must the way we protect children, support families. Okay. The month reminds us. Cross Massachusetts. Children's Alliance helps make that possible. Every community has a role. All right. Let us measure success by the futures we help protect. Okay, that's new. Well, let's do something a little meta. And let's ask ChatGPT to compare and contrast. Compare and contrast these three versions. Okay, emotional impact, strongest but restrained for version 3. That's good. Brand voice, closest to Maca. Innovation, excellent. Collaboration, strong, strong. Focus on outcomes, excellent. Distinctiveness, very good. Editorial voice, very good. Okay, so you see that you get a different response if you create brand guidelines specifically for AI, because AI guidelines were written for people, they were not written for machines. All right, well, now let's talk about image generation, which every day becomes more and more complex, and the results are more and more compelling. It's really important that we stay on top of this evolution of AI created imagery for many reasons, not the least of which is your brand. So let's do the same experiment with visuals. So let's start with as we did before, with a prompt that doesn't really reference brand. Now, that might not be as prevalent as it is for verbal, but it happens. So let's see what we get. This, of course, takes longer, so we're gonna pause here. I'm just gonna pause until we have a response. Okay, wow, no surprise. They created a new logo. This doesn't look bad by necessarily by any means, but wow, did it take some liberties. And this has nothing to do with the Maca brand. So let's try another one. We're going to do this one. Hold on, copy and paste. All right, now this one includes the colors, font, etc. So let's see what we get. And again, I'm going to pause until we have something to show. All right, well, it gives us a choice here. We've got the right colors. That is certainly true. We've got some of the right fonts. Yep, the right font seems great. Again, we have made up logos because that was not shared. We've got some funky shapes going on over here and here. So let's do one last one, and this is with AI ready brand guidelines. All right, we've got everything here. We got more, same of what we did before, all of this. All right, let's see what we get. Okay, now we are getting much closer. You see, we have the real Maca logo. They've embraced the fonts a little more boldly. This is still not right, but you know what? It is far, far closer than the first version we had. And it's important to note that, though, that this is still not right, because that's why in AI ready guidelines, it's not written just for AI, it's written for people too. So we also include a traffic light system. So here are the places where, yeah, it's okay. Go ahead and use ChatGPT or AI or whatever large language model you like. And here's where you need to be very careful. And most importantly, here, this is where you stop and need a professional. Another part of the AI ready guidelines is explaining the value that a copywriter, that a trained visual artist or graphic designer brings to the process. So there's a little more understanding of why you can't just throw some content into ChatGPT or again, whatever large language model you like, and get the kind of results that a person can. Now, in 5 years from now, that may no longer be something that we think about, but for right now, in the near future, it definitely is. So that is the value that AI ready brand guidelines bring. It is distinct and it is important. Every day, as I said, every day that you let your colleagues use AI any way they want is day that you lose brand value, is day that you lose competitive advantage, and is a day where your clients and prospects lose sight of who you are. I'm going to put in the episode description a link to what we do with AI brand ready guidelines. We can walk you through the process, show you how it's done, and give you the AI ready brand guidelines you need to maintain and build your brand's value. So if you've liked this video, you know the drill. You've got to like, you've got to subscribe, and you've got to tell all your friends. But most importantly, please stay on brand.